Imagine a world where the absolute laws of nature completely break down, where the ultimate killers of the wild suddenly forget how to be afraid. Picture a lone timber wolf stepping out of the dark winter shadows. It isn't crouching, it isn't stalking, it isn't even trying to use camouflage. Instead, it walks directly out into the open, stepping right onto a path toward a giant grizzly bear. It stands mere inches away from a beast 10 times its size, looking straight into a pair of massive, bared fangs with a strange, dead-eyed, empty calm. In the brutal reality of the wild, this isn't just a mistake, it's an immediate death sentence. But this wolf isn't trying to display insane courage. Its biological software has been completely overridden. A microscopic, beautifully malicious hacker has slipped past its firewall, manually deleting millions of years of survival code. It has turned an elite, intelligent hunter into a mindless puppet with one single terrifying objective. Welcome to the Sapiens Archive. Throughout human history, our species has recorded our greatest triumphs and archived our deepest primal nightmares. We have spent thousands of years documenting our ancient battles against the fiercest predators on the planet. But across the generations, the most terrifying monster Homo sapiens ever faced wasn't a giant beast. It was an invisible enemy, capable of stealing an animal's very soul and weaponizing it directly against us. To understand the true psychological horror of this real-world curse, we have to look back millions of years, deep into the forbidden lore of the ancient past. Long before this pathogen ever crossed paths with humanity, it was born in the pitch-black darkness of prehistoric caves. The leading scientific theory points deep inside ancient bat colonies. Millions of years ago, long before this virus ever infected a land mammal, it lived exclusively in the dark. Picture a prehistoric cave. It is an absolute server room of biological chaos. Millions of bats packed together tightly, ceiling to ceiling, shoulder to shoulder. In an overcrowded, hyper-dense environment like that, viruses mutate at an unhinged speed. Originally, this entity was likely just a mild respiratory bug. But over generations of random genetic mistakes, the virus hit ultimate evolutionary jackpot. It discovered a brilliant, high-velocity way to spread in a crowded cave: saliva. It adapted to live directly inside the mouth. Through natural selection, the virus thrived when it triggered a reflex that forced its host to snap or bite, instantly injecting its genetic code into a brand new home. The violent bite became its ultimate key to survival. Eventually, the virus broke out of its cave containment. An infected bat flying near the forest floor bit a land mammal, perhaps a primitive fox or an early wild dog. Suddenly, the virus stepped out of the dark and into a massive, completely untamed new world. But land mammals have much more complex brains than bats. To survive and conquer these larger hosts, a simple bite wasn't enough anymore. The virus had to upgrade its software. Over thousands of generations, it rewired itself into a master neurological engineer, perfectly designed to take over the mammalian nervous system. And then, it met us. From an anthropological standpoint, this is the exact moment the virus completely traumatized human culture. For early humans, dogs were our first and greatest animal allies. They protected our perimeter, guarded our children, and helped us hunt. We trusted them with our lives.
But when this virus entered our camps, it executed a devastating biological betrayal. It took our most loyal protectors and turned them into hyper-aggressive, foaming monsters that wanted to tear us apart.
Many historians and medical researchers believe this deep psychological trauma heavily influenced our global legends of werewolves and vampires. Think about it. A normal human or animal suddenly changing into a bloodthirsty, mindless beast, spreading its curse through a single violent bite? That isn't just mythology. That is a cultural reflection of a very real virus. It is a real-world curse written directly into the history of Homo sapiens. And today, That ancient evolutionary weapon is still working flawlessly. The modern invasion starts the exact second an infected tooth breaks the skin. But the virus doesn't make the rookie mistake of traveling through the bloodstream. The blood is a highly monitored zone, heavily patrolled by the body's elite immune defense forces. If the virus went there, it would be hunted down and destroyed in minutes. Instead, the virus plays it incredibly smart. It stays completely clear of the blood, locates the nearest microscopic nerve ending, and uses it as a secret gateway to step directly onto the body's internal highway system. Once it's safely inside the nerve, the virus behaves like a literal train robber. It hitches its cargo to the cell's natural moving proteins, specifically a cellular motor called dynin. The virus takes complete control of these machines, forcing them to carry it backward, crawling all the way up the leg straight toward the spine. It moves at a steady, mechanical, highly disciplined pace of about 4 inches every single day. It is an absolute, unstoppable one-way trip to the central control tower. And the entire time this is happening, the host's immune system has absolutely no idea it's under attack. Because the virus stays locked inside the insulated nerve shell, it is completely invisible to the body's radar. It's traveling through a secure underground bunker, jumping across the physical gaps between cells with absolute ease. Every single tick of the clock brings it closer to the animal's central processing unit. During this entire multi-week journey, the animal looks completely fine. It hunts with its pack, it eats, it sleeps, and it acts perfectly healthy. But this is the ultimate calm before the storm. The virus is maintaining a perfect illusion by using a flawless molecular cloaking device. Under normal conditions, when a cell realizes it has been infected, it immediately sounds a massive internal alarm. It secretes emergency proteins called interferons, telling neighboring cells to lock down their borders and call for backup. But the rabies virus is an expert in stealth operations. The moment it enters a cell, its specific proteins physically trap the cell's internal communication system, shutting it down before a single distress signal can be sent. The cellular warning lights are cut. The surrounding tissue remains completely oblivious. And the virus doesn't stop there. Even if an outside immune force somehow manages to realize something is wrong and tries to send protective killer T cells into the brain to clear out the infection, the virus deploys its secondary line of defense. It safe keeps its progress by manipulating the cellular borders of the blood-brain barrier. By keeping this structural barrier tightly closed against the body's defenses, it turns the host's own protective shield into a one-way lock. The body's elite defensive forces are kept completely stuck on the outside, scratching at the glass. Safe inside this stolen fortress, the virus finally reaches the brain, and it goes straight for a critical hub in the survival network, the danger detector. This danger detector, the amygdala and its surrounding network, is the ancient core of the brain that processes primal fear. It is the internal security system of the mind. It constantly calculates the size of an enemy, evaluates the risk of a fight, and triggers the survival instinct to run away. Fear is the only reason animals survive in a world full of monsters. But as the virus replicates, it causes severe swelling in this exact zone, completely short-circuiting the safety loop. The internal security system is essentially blindfolded and knocked unconscious. Suddenly, the pathways that measure risk are completely disrupted. The predator can no longer process the concept of a threat. It can stand right in front of a massive, roaring super predator, looking directly into its bared fangs, and its heart rate will stay perfectly normal. It doesn't feel brave. It literally just lacks the neurological configuration required to understand that it can die. Fear simply no longer exists in its universe. But deleting fear is only the first half of this terrifying evolutionary process. To turn the host into an active delivery system, the virus replaces that eerie calm with blinding, uncontrollable fury. It launches a direct strike on the brain's chemical pathways, crippling the body's ability to produce serotonin. Serotonin acts like the brain's ultimate emotional brake pad. the chemical that controls dangerous impulses and dampens aggressive reflexes. When the virus disrupts that brake line, behavioral restraint completely vanishes. The brain's serotonin levels plummet. At the exact same time, the virus forces the cell's internal energy engines, the mitochondria, into a state of chaotic overdrive. This triggers a massive, overwhelming storm of chemical stress that locks the animal in a permanent state of agonizing electrical overstimulation. Look at your own pets sleeping safely in the room right now. Thousands of years of deep evolutionary trust, right? Now imagine a microscopic entity flipping a single chemical switch in that brain, completely draining their brakes, and suddenly, that loyal protector targets a threat. That is the true horrifying reality of this biological hack. The apex predator has been transformed into a living powder keg, waiting for a single spark to detonate. The slightest external sound, a sudden flash of light, or a moving shadow triggers an instantaneous, explosive attack reflex. The animal is fully conscious, but its brain is misfiring at maximum voltage, trapping it inside a living nightmare of pure madness. Now, the virus connects this broken, hyper-aggressive brain directly to its physical transmission strategy. It reverses its logistical direction, traveling out of the brain and rushing down the autonomic nerves straight into the saliva glands. Here, inside the oral cavity, it replicates with staggering speed. It completely floods the animal's saliva until it is a highly concentrated reservoir packed with billions of active viral copies. And then, the virus triggers its most brutal mechanism. It locks the host's throat. It attacks the deep brainstem, causing excruciating, violent muscle spasms the absolute second the throat comes into contact with liquid. This is the true meaning of hydrophobia, physical inability to swallow water. Now, nature didn't design this virus to have conscious intent. The virus doesn't plan its moves or know what it's doing, but evolution has selected a terrifyingly precise transmission advantage. By blocking the throat, the host cannot swallow the fluid away into the stomach. The virus-saturated saliva is forced to pool, overflow, and foam heavily inside the mouth, perfectly priming the weapon for the next strike. The evolutionary trap is now flawlessly complete. The loss of threat perception forces the apex predator out of its quiet, isolated wilderness territory. Driven by a neurological storm, it actively wanders straight into human villages, farmsteads, and suburban campsites, habitats a healthy wild animal would avoid at all costs. It walks right out into the open, aggressively scanning the environment for anything that moves, and the complete lack of chemical brakes triggers the final explosive reflex. The host snaps and bites violently at absolutely anything that moves, tearing open tissue and injecting the liquid viral weapon deep into a brand new target. The particles settle into the new muscle fiber, the cloaking device turns on, and the entire multi-week cycle starts all over again. It is a brutal masterclass in evolutionary design. The rabies virus completely rewrites what a creature is. It turns our allies into monsters and turns apex killers into mindless puppets. Fear is the ultimate shield keeping all complex life alive on Earth. When a microscopic entity can delete it completely with a single bite, ask yourself, who is the real apex predator?